Hello, and welcome to this introduction to the Newcastle upon Tyne Bach Choir's next concert as part of the Early Music at Newcastle series. I am Eric Cross, the choir's musical director, and this talk provides some background to the music we are performing in King's Hall on the afternoon of Sunday, 6th of March. This concert presents three contrasting works, all written within a couple of decades of the year 1700 by three leading composers from Germany, Italy and France. The best known of these works is Handel's Dixit Dominus, written at the beginning of his formative years in Italy, where he absorbed many aspects of Italian musical style which he blended in his later compositions with those from his native Germany and his adopted home in London. The score of Dixit Dominus states that the work was composed at Rome in April 1707, making it Handel's earliest surviving choral work, as well as his earliest surviving manuscript score. Here is a page from this score with the opening choral entry. The setting of Psalm 110 is full of youthful enthusiasm and vigour, making the most of the pictorial elements of the text, particularly at implebit ruinas, conquasabit capita in terra multorum. He shall heap up the dead and crush the rulers of the whole earth, with its fragmented textures followed by pounding repeated chords. The final movement is a choral tour de force, with its long closing fugue based on a single repeated note, something Handel was to return to decades later in one of his orchestral concerti grossi. Vivaldi's Magnificat, initially composed just a few years after the Handel, exists in 4 different versions, and was a composer's most widely circulated sacred vocal composition. The oldest form is found in 2 non-autographed manuscripts in Prague, and the Bohemian composer Jan Dismas Zelenka had a copy in his own music library. The earliest version was probably written around 1715 for the Ospedale della Pietà, the charitable institution in Venice where Vivaldi worked for much of his career. We know from an entry in the institution's records of June 1715 that Vivaldi received a special payment for a complete mass, a vespers, an oratorio, over 30 motets and other labours. The second and third versions of the Magnificat probably date from the late 1720s. They may have been intended for San Lorenzo in Damaso, Rome, a church close to the home of Cardinal Pietro Ottoboni, one of Vivaldi's regular patrons at this time, or for the Venetian convent of San Lorenzo. There is in fact little difference between these 2 versions. Vivaldi simply adds to the manuscript score the occasional direction to create a work in 2 cori, in which most of the movements are sung by 2 choirs together, but now and again with an antiphonal exchange between 2 separate groups of musicians. The final version dates from 1739 and provides new arias for several movements. That it was intended for the Pietà is clear from the fact that these arias bear the names of the 5 girls from the Pietà who originally sang them. Our performance of the Magnificat is based on the single choir version, probably written for Rome. Vivaldi divides the text into several independent movements in a similar fashion to a Bach cantata. The work opens with a passage of powerful chromatic harmony, of which Vivaldi was clearly proud, for he used it again elsewhere in works such as his Kyrie and Credo, each time in the same key of G minor, and he also uses it in 2 instrumental works. As in many of Vivaldi's sacred works, there is a return of this opening music for the Gloria Patri section near the end, which underlines the meaning of sicut erat in principio, as it was in the beginning, with a musical pun. Lalande's motet, Super Flumina Babilonis, takes us into a very different musical world, that of late 17th century France, with its distinctive ornamentation and emphasis on the dance. This is, as far as we know, only the second time that this rarely heard work has ever been performed in the northeast. In 1683, at the age of 25, Michel-Richard de Lalande took up his first post at the Royal Chapel at Versailles, and he soon held virtually all the main musical positions at court under both Louis XIV and Louis XV until his death in 1726. This was a time when royal tastes were increasingly favouring chapel music as opposed to court entertainments, and Lalande's natural inclination towards sacred music was soon exploited to the full. 64 motets by Lalande have survived. According to one of his pupils, Lalande's great merit consisted in wonderful choice of melody, judicious use of harmony, and nobility of expression. All these features are fully evident in his splendid setting of Psalm 137. The earliest manuscript score of Super Flumina Babilonis is dated 1689, but this omits the last 2 movements and shows various other differences from later manuscript sources, which date from around 1706, and it's this later version that we are performing. The penitential nature of the text is reflected by the sombre C minor tonality of the opening movements, in particular the fine first chorus, with its expressive harmonies that vividly depict the Israelites' lament for their exile by the waters of Babylon, and shows why, in his day, Lalande was regarded as one of France's finest composers.